Hello, I'm Cinemod470, and Dispatch is so good I played all 4 save files and got the Platinum Trophy. From some of the former talent of Telltale Games, Adhoc Studios' debut title is an interactive, episodic, superhero workplace comedy where you play as Robert Robertson III, also known as Mecha Man. Robert is a superhero without superpowers. He instead had a mech suit which he used to fight organized crime in Los Angeles for 15 years, like his father and grandfather before him. However, after Shroud, the murderer of his father, breaks out of prison, Robert is led into a trap, and his suit is destroyed. Since Robert spent his entire life savings keeping the suit running, he no longer has the resources to repair it, forcing him to retire as Mecha Man. But this isn't the end of Robert's story, just this chapter, as Robert is approached by the Superhero Dispatch Network, a company of heroes for hire who recruit him as a dispatcher, where he can use his knowledge and experience to train other heroes in exchange for using their resources to rebuild his suit. He is then put in charge of the Z-Team, a group of volatile former villains and members of the company's Phoenix program designed for rehabilitating felons. So Robert really has his work cut out for him. For this video, I'll be going over the writing, narrative, setting, gameplay, characters, and the branching choices throughout the season, so there will be spoilers. And if you like what I do, hit the like button, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe if you haven't. It costs you nothing, but for me it tells the algorithm to push my content to more people. Since Dispatch's gameplay is relatively limited, games of its like in the interactive narrative genre have to put a lot of focus into its writing to maintain the player's engagement. And thankfully, Dispatch's dialogue is perfect.
Well, you're really going to act like you don't remember me.
Wait, it's coming back to me. You are sunglasses indoors at night guy. Your superpower is that you're able to let everyone know in the room that you're a douchebag, because you should literally never do that unless you're at the final table of the World Series of Poker, but even then, if you win, you're still a fucking loser. You gonna wash before you do that?
Nah, bro, I never touch nothing. Just touch my pants and underwear only. Even for shake, I just do like this.
Can you show me again? I don't think I got it. Why are you sending a distress call when you haven't left the building?
Could you send a locksmith downstairs?
What happened?
Coop seduced me.
No. I said, hey, want to see something cool, and then handcuffed you to a squat rack.
But you said it with a hot voice, so I assumed you meant boobs.
Hey, losing all that weight don't make you better than us.
Yeah. Chill out, Dad.
I never had a dad.
I know.
Fuck that's supposed to mean?
You told me one time you didn't have a dad.
Huh?
Came back to apologize. All these goddamn apartments look the same. That guy watching us from the balcony walked into his house thinking it was yours. Sorry about that.
Fuck you!
Hey, he said he was sorry.
Well, fuck you too!
The humour manages to find the perfect balance between being funny but also real, as every character has their own distinct personality and they bounce off each other in their own unique way. It also doesn't feel forced or need a laugh track to get a reaction from the player. Despite the real-world setting, Dispatch's narrative doesn't try to make superheroes overly realistic or cynical. The writers instead take a hopeful stance on superheroes, since the narrative's themes are redemption and transformation, as the Z-Team steadily grow from the damaged, violent people they used to be into the heroes they're meant to be. And it's genuinely heartwarming witnessing these powder cake characters become better people and actually respect Robert and the work he's put into them. The narrative is also told using visual storytelling, like how Robert's bare apartment shows how empty his life is, because being Mecha Man has been his sole focus, and how Invisigal has self-destructive tendencies due to a smoking habit while having asthma. But the best example is during Robert's housewarming party, when the team all give him lamps, because Invisigal said to bring a lamp or something. And the scene really shows the writer's talent, because it syncs with the message that each team member brings a light into Robert's life when he used to be alone, and the team's simple-minded personalities. What makes Dispatch's universe so fun is that it isn't afraid to draw on comic books for inspiration, but still tries to add realistic qualities into its narrative by uniting the fantastical and the mundane. You see, Dispatch takes a revisionist stance on the superhero genre. According to the theories of Thomas Schutz, The revisionist stage of the genre cycle occurs after the spectators are used to the predictable and formulaic story beats of that genre, so the narrative takes a more self-aware approach and tries to deviate away from the expectations and cliches. Superpowers, aliens, magic, they're all treated as normal everyday occurrences, but they're also given trade-offs and pedestrian challenges, like how Trackstar's super speed makes him age faster, and Invisigal can only turn invisible while holding her breath, but she also has severe asthma. Sometimes the challenges have more nuance, like with Man. Though he's one of the most powerful beings on Earth, because he's an alien, he doesn't understand all the complexities of human speech, so he struggles understanding the people around him, which was a factor in his recent breakup and causes him to suffer severe depression. The main cast are all capable of saving the day, but they have to work through their depression, insecurities, and physical limitations. However, due to Dispatch's focus on the characters, we don't really delve into the ethics of superheroes becoming a subscription service. The most we get is some lip service where characters remark on how there aren't many real superheroes left in the world. Since the main focus on Dispatch is the branching narrative, the gameplay is limited to quick-time events, hacking, and of course, dispatching. Unlike Telltale's branching narrative games, Dispatch isn't a point-and-click adventure game and doesn't have areas for the player to explore, gain more information about the world, and learn more about the characters. The point-and-click format worked for those games because depending on the property, the mechanics would benefit the game, whether it be looking for clues or finding hidden resources. However, a downside for this mechanic would be that the graphics for the cutscenes had to match the game engine for fidelity, so the amount of detail they could put into animations and character expressions were limited. But since Dispatch doesn't have those hub sections, the cutscenes can be fully animated, have a lot more subtle details in the facial expressions, and great shot composition, making it feel like a high-quality animated show. When it comes to the QuickTime events, they're very simple. Press the same button at the right time, and hold and pull the cursor in the right direction. In my first playthrough, I thought they were fine, but I turned them off on replay since they auto-succeed and it allowed me to really appreciate the fight scenes. However, there are moments where the animation looks a little awkward since it slows down to account for the button prompt, but my biggest complaint about the QuickTime events is, for the most part, there isn't really a negative impact or a game over if you fail the sections, aside from this one feature that I'll get into later. The animation will either continue as normal or someone will step in and help out. So honestly, the only thing being impacted is the player's self-esteem. The hacking sections, however, were my second favorite part of the game. Though it starts off very simple, each episode brings a new mechanic or challenge which keeps them fresh. First, there's a time limit, then they introduce antiviruses that chase you until you finish or manage to block their path, and then they introduce power nodes that unlock new pathways and can destroy antiviruses when they get too close. There are also optional hacking missions during the dispatch shifts that have their own unique challenges. There's an option to turn on unlimited hacking tries for those who want to breeze past them, but personally I kept this feature turned off on all my playthroughs because it made the minigames more exciting. And of course, the best part of the game is dispatching heroes. Basically, you get different calls from across torrents, each of which has their own criteria for what is needed to succeed, and the player has to deduce from the criteria which hero to send based on their stats. The closer the stats match, the more likely the call will succeed, and if they succeed, they'll gain experience points depending on how difficult the call was for them, level up, and you can increase their stats however you choose. Meanwhile, Robert will also level up as a dispatcher depending on the shift's performance, granting the player resources that can help the heroes in future shifts and a bonus stat increase. Pretty simple. However, a call's success is also based on a computerized dice roll in the form of a circle that bounces around the prerequisite area and has to land within the hero's stat graph. So even if you send the right hero for the job, there's a small chance you will fail. But at the same time, if you send the wrong hero, there's a small chance you can succeed. But depending on the call, if a hero fails, they will become injured and their stats will decrease. And if they get injured again, they will be downed and cannot be sent out on calls until they recover. Some calls do allow you to send more than one hero to add their stats together and increase the chance to succeed, but there are also other factors the player has to account for if they want a perfect shift. mainly timing. All the calls have a set amount of time they will stay active, and you have to account for the amount of time it takes for the hero to reach the call, finish the call, return home, and then rest before they can be sent out again. So as tempting as it is to send multiple heroes on the one call to ensure its success, you run the risk of not having those heroes available for a call they would be perfect for. Certain calls can also be disrupted, where a hero has encountered a problem and you have to advise them on how to solve it. And like the call's criteria, you have to infer which stat the solution refers to and hope their stats are high enough for the solution to work. But there is a chance the hero dispatched has a solution that auto-succeeds the disruption, whether it be because of their powers or just their background. And speaking of superhero powers, each hero has their own unique ability that you discover while playing that can either increase their stats or provide support. Like how Invisigal will move and complete calls faster if she's on her own due to her lone wolf personality. Punch-Up's powers prevent his stats from decreasing if he gets injured and he can't be downed. And Sonar's intelligence and charisma stat will swap with his fight and vigor in between calls as he transforms from his hybrid form to his Megabat form. After discovering their special ability, the player is given the opportunity to send them to hero training, granting them a new ability or upgrading the one they already have. It's up to the player to decide based on how their playthrough is going and what they believe is needed, but you can only choose one for the rest of the game, so it encourages some replayability. Each pair of heroes also have a synergy bonus that increases their chance of success when they are sent on calls together. To figure out which heroes to send, there's playing the game and waiting to see if the synergy marker appears, or you can pay attention to the character's dialogue and interactions to work out who's closest with who. I'd classify Dispatch's gameplay as easy to learn but hard to master. As much like how the hacking sections steadily increase in difficulty, so do the dispatch shifts. You get the tutorial in episode 1 and meet the Z-Team in episode 2 where you get a feel for their personalities and abilities. But then you get a shift where the team starts sabotaging each other on calls, so you not only have to help the heroes avoid injury, you have to work out who to send in groups based on who's less likely to sabotage the other member. Then there are times you don't have a full roster and get an increase in calls, or get a new hero to help, but it turns out they might be more of a liability, so you have to rethink your dispatch strategy. And in later episodes, Dispatch introduces effect points, so if a hero's stats reach a certain region, they get double the experience if they succeed, but there are also instant fail regions if a hero's stats are too high. My only complaint about the dispatch shifts is that they probably weren't meant to be played on console. You see, I was playing on the PS5, and sometimes when a call popped up, my analog stick wouldn't select the icon, so I had to pause the game, go up and down on the menu, and then I could select the call. And when the calls would bundle together in weird positions, I couldn't always select the one I wanted. Because Dispatch is also an interactive narrative game, choices and consequences are key for its replayability and player investment. So this is the point of the video where I will be going into heavy spoilers. If you're still deciding whether or not you should buy the game for yourself, I'd say you should go into it completely blind, since there's no greater feeling than making choices and not knowing what consequences will follow. Much like Telltale's games, the player is given dialogue options and choices that can affect the story, and a time limit to select them. But unlike Telltale's games, silence isn't always a valid option. When the timer runs out, the game will select a dialogue option for you instead of having the player character say nothing. So you're encouraged to make a choice in the given time. But do these choices actually have consequences? Yes and no. Certain dialogue choices do affect Robert's relationship with the side characters and can lead to diverging dialogue.
It's always the superhero. It's hard to live up to.
Why do you care what I think?
Because I like you. And I think you like me.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
It's hard to live up to.
Why do you care what I think?
I don't know. It's probably healthier if I don't.
Well, it's nice that you do.
There are also short and long-term consequences for how you interact with the Z-Team when it comes to how they respond during the following dispatch shift, whether that be ignoring a call or leaving the shift entirely. and choices in episodes 3 and 4 will affect the team's roster and cause one of them to come back as a villain for the final battle. But several dialogue options, no matter how egregious it makes Robert look, will still have the same outcome because the narrative needs those outcomes to happen. They're mostly just there for the player to colour their Robert's personality. And when comparing Dispatch to older Telltale games, where choices could lead to relationships being permanently damaged, characters dying, or even whole episodes being different, I can understand why long-term fans of the genre would view Dispatch as a downgrade. However, I would be foolish to say that the choices don't matter at all. Though at first glance, several dialogue options and binary choices appear to be throwaway lines and only have short-term consequences, the culmination of those choices affects Invisigal's ending, whether you set a good example as a mentor and she becomes a hero, or give up on her and she returns to villainy. In fact, Invisigal's ending is dependent on every aspect of gameplay throughout Dispatch. How successful she is on each call and whether she gets training to improve her abilities, and if Robert succeeds on certain story-related hacking missions and QuickTime events. But I do wish these choices didn't just affect Invisigal's Sonar and Coupe, but the rest of the Z team, specifically Flambe. Flambe is the team's office bully and one of Mecha Man's old villains. And their rivalry wasn't akin to Metro Man and Megamind, where Robert would repeatedly lock him up in jail. Flambe legitimately tried to kill him, and in the heat of battle, no pun intended, Robert cut off 2 of his fingers. And there was an incident after Robert lost his suit where he straight up humiliated Flambe just by throwing a drink in his face. Though he doesn't know Robert's secret identity, Flambe shows the same level of antagonism towards him, causing the 2 of them to throw jabs and other stuff at each other. In episode 5, the team wants to know who Robert really is, and if he says he's Mecha Man, Flambe tries to kill him, but the rest of the Z team step in to protect Robert. Flambe then leaves and skips the next shift. After Robert's house party, however, Flambe punches Robert in the face and says it's something he'll have to do every month to get over his hatred. And when the rest of the Z team want to cut Invisigal in episode 7, this version of Flambe will agree with Golem to keep her in since he was let back into the team despite trying to kill Robert. All in all, an okay character arc. Now, if the player doesn't reveal Robert's identity, he'll say it doesn't matter which hero he was since he's left that part of himself behind, and it's the Z team's turn to be heroes. Which is a total lie since Robert goes back to fixing his suit the very next day. Though Robert and Flambe settle their differences at that moment, Robert's identity gets revealed anyway at the party.
Wait, Robert's Mecha Man?
And the story continues very similar to the other route with the exception of Flambe supporting Vizzy. And by the ending, Flambe knows Robert is Mecha Man, but doesn't have the same volatile reaction he had in the previous route. This choice mainly adjusts the cutscenes and dialogue in the following episode, determines whether or not Flambe shows up to the next shift, and contributes towards Invisigal's ending. But Robert's relationship with Flambe and the rest of the Z team remains the same no matter which choice you pick. For the most part, the weight of this choice comes from the player's emotional investment in the story and whether the choice matters to them. Despite the branching narrative's limitations, I'm willing to look past them since those limitations weren't due to a lack of creativity but not having enough money. Seriously, I cannot understate the financial risk Adhoc took bringing Dispatch to life. Their developer backed out midway through production, so the team had to continue working on the game without getting paid. And if it wasn't for Critical Role's support, Dispatch may never have been published. So, when you consider the cost of writing a branching scene, recording the dialogue, and then animating it, I think the fact Adhoc was able to give us any kind of branching narrative that's also a well-written story is an achievement. The most important aspect of any narrative game, especially a superhero one, is the main character. Robert Robertson III is the superhero without superpowers archetype. However, unlike more popular examples of the archetype, he doesn't have Batman's flawless martial skill or Iron Man's innovative intelligence. But he does have Batman's level of brutality and Iron Man's level of alcoholism. Though Robert's strength and intelligence is limited, especially when compared to literal superhumans, He isn't shown to be weak or stupid, as he makes up for his limitations with 15 years of experience, superb critical thinking in stressful situations, an incredible resilience to pain, and not being afraid to fight dirty.
Oh, motherfucker!
I suppose he's more like Terry McGinnis Batman.
What are you doing? Fighting dirty. The real Batman would never...
What makes Robert stand out as a superhero is that, unlike other more prominent superhero models like paragons or anti-heroes, he starts out as a professional hero. Characters like Superman, Batman, and Spider-Man all take their superhero duties seriously, but their dual identities allow them to have a life and job outside of the costume. A professional hero, however, is a character who focuses everything they are into their superhero identity because they believe that's where they should put all their energy, or because they don't know how to live any other way. Some of the best examples of a professional hero are Hawkeye, Invincible, and Ninjak. Though some of them have secret identities, their sole focus is on being a superhero, and it gradually takes a physical, mental, and social toll on them as their lives are a series of battles wearing them down, but they keep going because they feel compelled to push forward. Also, comment down below if you know who Ninjak is. I can't be the only Ninjak fan on the internet. When it comes to Robert's character arc, I can understand that for most writers, the first instinct would be to make Robert dependent on his mech suit and being what Invisigal described as a little bitch turtle without his shell, while also having him view dispatching as a downgrade from the hero he used to be. And his character arc would be learning to let Mecha Man go and realizing that not all heroes wear capes. But Robert being a professional hero means he actually takes being a superhero seriously, both as Mecha Man and a dispatcher.
The bar is very low with this group.
Well, it's not low for me. Look, I like to make a joke and keep things light as much as the next person. But when it comes to work, I'm not fucking around here. If you want the Phoenix program to survive, the bar needs to go up.
And how would we do that?
By treating the Z team like what they are, a bunch of villains. And leading a supervillain team takes a different approach than a superhero team. I need to be around them. I need them to see I'm all in, and they need to match that energy.
And because of his dedication, we see Robert being effective without the suit at the start of episode 1 as a fighter and a hacker, only needing the suit when dealing with superpowered threats. And even after it gets destroyed and Robert is severely injured, he's still willing to put himself in danger and isn't afraid to throw hands against people who could kill him instantly. Robert's character arc instead goes deeper, as it's tied to his depression from his father's neglect and death, and his isolation caused from his dedication to Mecha Man. And Robert has to learn to let people into his life so he can start healing. I mean, Robert's isolation was so bad, the only people he could talk to was a henchman he kidnapped and his dog Beef. Though Beef is quite insightful.
Yeah, exactly. See? This is why I appreciate her talks.
Like the Z-Team, Robert is a phoenix, but his character arc isn't learning to not be Mecha Man or that he doesn't need the suit. It's transforming from a loner into a leader.
Most people will look around this room and see a bunch of villains. Not even the super kind, just plain ass, run-of-the-mill, vanilla fucking villains. But that's not what I see. 'Cause lucky for you, I'm not most people. When I look around this room, what I see is potential. Unfortunately for you, it's a curse. 'Cause there isn't a thing in the universe that goes more wasted than potential. And despite how common it is, no one seems to forget. It's what they whisper when you leave the room. Oh, so-and-so had so much potential. It follows you forever. I'm here to help you lift the curse of potential by getting you to fucking do something with it.
What helped Dispatch draw in and create such a large fan base was the unconventional casting choices. Though most of the supporting cast aren't full-time professional voice actors, and for some of them this is their first time acting in a video game, they are perfect for their roles. And I don't just mean their comedic timing and improvised lines, I mean they give their characters a full spectrum of emotion. All the characters have distinctive personalities and relationships with each other to provide unique interactions and drama. And they all have layers to them that are peeled back over the course of the game. And the characters with the most intrigue are Blonde Blazer, Chase, and Invisigal. Blonde Blazer is one of SDN's managers and hires Robert after his suit is destroyed. She's powerful, brave, hopeful, and is viewed as one of the last true heroes. But those qualities have had a negative impact on her civilian identity, as Blazer has a low opinion of herself due to everyone's expectations of her. So her character really flourishes under the revisionist aspect of the superhero story. I also have to really give Erin Yvette the respect she deserves for the Mandy reveal. When the player chooses to have dinner with her, Yvette perfectly portrays this superpowered woman feeling afraid about showing Robert what she really looks like. And I honestly didn't know what was going to happen. I mean, was she going to be incredibly old? Was she going to be an alien? Was she going to look like the Batman from Below? Comment down below if you know who that is. But no. Turns out Blonde Blazer's big secret is that she's not a real blonde.
I'm sorry.
You're disappointed.
Are you kidding? I can't tell if... Are you joking or am I joking?
It's a big difference.
You're what? What, 2 inches shorter?
And a brunette, come on, it's...
Now granted, Mandy's insecurities at face value appear insignificant, but again, Yvette's performance portrays that she can't help but feel apprehensive even though the change is minor, and that other relationships she's had have ended because they prefer Blazer over Mandy. Unfortunately, unlike the other characters, to really get the full picture of Blonde Blazer, you have to follow her romance route. Don't get me wrong, she's still a cool character even if you don't romance her, but it kinda sucks since quite a few players are bound to miss out unless they're willing to replay the game. Chase is Robert's old friend and a former member of his dad's superhero team, the Brave Brigade. Unfortunately, his speedster abilities caused him to age faster, so like Mecha Man, Trackstar is forced to retire, and Chase takes a job as a dispatcher. Though Chase and Blonde Blazer are seen as the ideal examples of superheroes, they are polar opposites when it comes to their opinions of the Z-Team, as Blazer fully believes that the program could reform the former villains, but Chase thinks that they're a lost cause due to his experience as Trackstar. Chase also resents them because the team call themselves real heroes while he is forced to sit on the sidelines due to his powers literally killing him. And while we're on the subject, I want to talk about Chase not dying. Don't get me wrong, I like Chase and I'm glad he's not dead, but the devs confirmed he was meant to die in earlier drafts of the script. And even before the confirmation, I had suspicions that Chase was being set up to die. The game establishes in episode 2 that if Chase uses his super speed, he'll age faster, and considering he's only 39 and looks 90, another use of his powers would likely kill him. And all of episode 6 sets up Chase's supposed demise, with him still disapproving of Invisigal being a hero and her feelings for Robert, his outburst at the party where he says she's not a real hero, causing her to punch Chase and leave, and finally his heart-to-heart with Robert, where he tells Chase about how Vizzy thought that her powers fated her to become a villain, and how if it weren't for Chase and his dad setting a good example, Robert may have turned into a villain. All these moments accumulate to Chase using his life-threatening powers to be a hero one more time, and save Invisigal from Shroud after she goes off on her own without approval. And the scene is really heartbreaking as we see Chase smiling as he runs, because his final act is saving someone and not just expiring in his sickbed. After Chase saves Vizzy, he starts walking away, giving us that little bit of hope that he's okay, only for him to collapse. And before the credits roll, we hear Vizzy pleading for Chase to hang on, because despite their arguments, Chase was willing to give his life to save her, and she doesn't want to be the cause of his death. However, Chase isn't dead, he's in a coma.
He's gone into a coma.
Which I have mixed feelings on. Because yes, Chase is in a critical state and he's not likely to recover, and Invisigal going rogue did bring a lot of heat on SDN, but the character's reactions fit better if Chase actually died. The Z-Team's anger and demand for Invisigal's termination, the team's morale dropping if you don't cut her, and Robert going back to the same villain bar he had a fight in to get drunk. And had Chase died, it would have put more weight on the decision on whether or not Invisigal would get cut. but the writers changed it so Blazer would give her amulet to Chase so he could return in the final battle against Shroud. Now, this is the part where I have mixed feelings, because Chase's return was important since it not only turned the tide in the final battle, but it also highlighted Shroud's weakness, which I'll expand on later. And Blazer giving Chase her magic amulet and continuing to fight without powers completes her own arc, as she was willing to give up her powers to save Chase's life, and likely due to Robert's inspiration, she's not afraid to let other people see her civilian side. But as much as I love Chase and want to see more of this new version of him, the setup and the character's reaction to his comatose state makes me wonder if it would have been better for the narrative if he died. But instead, he comes out of the coma more powerful than before. Now, don't get me wrong, Chase isn't entirely fixed, as Blazer establishes that he needs to keep the amulet on or else he'll go back into a life-threatening coma, so there's still a consequence from him using his powers to save Vizzy. But honestly, whether or not it would have been better if he died will depend on how his character is utilized in any future installments. Invisigal, aka Invisibitch, is one of the former villains turned hero that Robert dispatches throughout the city. Though Invisigal is trying to redeem herself, her troubled background and impulsive behavior throughout the game causes her to butt heads with Robert and the rest of the team. And due to her repeated failures, she believes that her powers make her destined to become a villain, since invisibility is more useful committing crimes rather than stopping them.
I have fucking villain powers. I can turn invisible and skulk in the shadows. My powers let me steal shit and watch famous people fuck. Being a villain is my fate.
Her character also perfectly represents the effectiveness of the Phoenix program, especially since she was revealed to have been the one who planted the bomb on Mecha Man's suit, and her ending is dependent on whether Robert continues to help her embrace heroism. And anyone willingly calling herself Invisibitch probably didn't have the healthiest upbringing, so it really is up to Robert to try and look past her misdeeds and set a good example. I also have to really applaud Dispatch for not making Invisigal's good ending dependent on romancing her. Because sometimes we don't need a partner to be a better person, just someone who believes we can and shows us how. It helps maintain the message of redemption. Also, I want to bring back up the Z-Team's simple-minded behavior having a deeper meaning. Specifically, whenever a character calls Vizzy a bitch. Because at first glance, it's a basic insult, and maybe a Breaking Bad reference.
Hi, I'm Aaron Paul, and I'm about to call you a bitch.
But it also references how Vizzy is falling back into her old ways. And if you get the hero ending, the rest of the Z-Team will chant, "Not a bitch, not a bitch." Again, very simple dialogue, but also a proclamation that Invisigal has left Invisibitch behind. But what's a superhero story, or a workplace comedy, without a little romance? While Robert is dispatching the Z-Team and fixing his suit, the player has the option to pursue a relationship with Blonde Blazer or Invisigal. The player also has the option to keep both relationships professional, or try to pursue both. As the episodes released, there was a great deal of online discourse about who Robert should be with, so much so that Dispatch was called the male version of Twilight. Though personally I find this comparison pretty reductive, as both Blazer and Invisigal are great fully formed characters with their own unique appeal that isn't dependent on a relationship with Robert. Though Blonde Blazer is called too perfect and safe, that's not entirely true. In fact, the in-universe belief that she's perfect causes her to have insecurities about her secret identity, and whether people only like her because she's Blonde Blazer. As for the complaint that she feels too safe, it's not really framed as a detriment. The reason why Blazer feels safe is because she lets Robert feel vulnerable, that he can be himself without judgment, much like how Mandy can feel vulnerable around Robert. Another complaint I keep hearing about Blonde Blazer is that players don't want Robert to be a rebound, since she recently broke up with Man, or worse, that she broke up with him because she wanted to pursue Robert. First of all, Robert isn't a rebound, since Blazer isn't trying to avoid processing her breakup, she doesn't try to force a relationship, and the game's dialogue and bonus comic confirms that Blazer had been considering breaking up with Man since before she met Robert.
It felt a little impulsive, but maybe it was a long time coming. It's hard to say.
I hope I didn't contribute to anything.
Oh, why would you have contributed to it?
Guess that means I didn't. which is what I was hoping for.
So you are to blame for my sadness.
Maybe, but I doubt it. I'd guess this is something she was thinking about for a while.
The way I read it is that Blazer was attracted to Robert, but couldn't make a move on him until she dealt with her relationship with Phenomenon. Though Invisigal's impulsive, volatile nature can be challenging, it doesn't mean she's incapable of change, as the very idea of a challenge means it can be worked through with enough effort. However, her nature does have its appeal, since she doesn't waste time mincing words and is upfront about what she wants. And much like how Robert helps her work through her self-destructive tendencies, Vizzy does the same for him. However, out of the two of them, Invisigal does bring more drama to the narrative due to the reveal that she was working for Shroud and planted the bomb on Robert's suit. And if you follow the Blazer route, the game will show you how jealous Vizzy is. In comparison, Blazer is a little too mature. The only real drama comes from her relationship with Phenomenon, which is given more weight if Robert is trying to pursue her, but their relationship ends in the next episode. And going back to the topic of consequences, even if the player cheats on Blazer, she gets over it, and Robert continues his relationship with Vizzy. Now, when getting the full context of Blazer's character, it's understandable that she wouldn't waste time pursuing someone who isn't interested in her, since she recently ended a relationship where she didn't feel happy. But unless the writers know something I don't, I feel like Blazer should be more resentful of Robert cheating on her, since she's been upfront about how her powers make her think she's not good enough as a partner. As love interests go, neither option is bad, because the right choice really comes down to player preference. Do you want a relationship where you can feel vulnerable, or one where you feel desired? The only shortcoming to the love story in this branching narrative game is when the player tries to pursue both and doesn't receive any negative consequences. A hero is only as good as his villain, and Shroud is a pretty good villain. A former member of the Brave Brigade, Elliot Connors helped create the Astral Pulse, the power source for the Mecha Man suit. But due to tensions rising between him and Robbie Jr., Elliot killed him and went to prison. 15 years later, Shroud breaks out and destroys both the suit and seemingly the pulse. Though he doesn't have that much screen time, what makes Shroud the perfect villain for Robert isn't solely the revenge plot, it's how they're juxtaposed against each other. Like Robert, Shroud doesn't have any natural superpowers. He instead uses cybernetic modifications to allow him to calculate probabilities for near-perfect predictions, giving him this relaxed but sinister demeanor, since no matter what anyone throws at him, Shroud has planned ahead for it. Shroud also uses those mods to power up his henchmen and other supervillains, as he believes evil cannot be stopped or redeemed, only controlled, contrasting Robert's belief that the Z-Team can be redeemed by setting a good example. But in order for Shroud's predictions to be perfect and have absolute control, he needs the Astral Pulse from Robert's suit. Both Shroud's abilities and beliefs come to a head in the final battle, as the Z-Team is spread out over the city and Robert finally has his suit fixed. But when he and Shroud fight, none of Robert's attacks do anything because Shroud has a counter for all of them. But then the Z-Team come to the rescue, and Shroud can't predict their strategy because of how chaotic they are. But as the battle continues, he gets a better sense of their powers and manages to counter their chaos. And when Robert is on the back foot, something truly unexpected happens. Blazer gives her amulet to Chase, getting him out of his coma, and manages to score a critical hit on Shroud's mech. Going back to what I said about why I was on the fence about Chase being alive, though his death was set up and would have been narratively satisfying, this moment perfectly illustrates Shroud's weakness to the player, that the accuracy of his predictions are dependent on what he knows. And Shroud could never have predicted Chase would come back because he never knew how Blazer's powers worked. In his weakened state, Robert and the Z-Team managed to wreck Shroud's mech, but he has one more trick up his sleeve. Beef! Shroud gives Robert an ultimatum: give him the Astral Pulse, or Beef dies. And the player is given a choice: give Shroud the Pulse, try to trick him with a faulty prototype, or give him both. If you give him the real Pulse, he and his underlings will become more powerful, and his mod tells him that if Robert is left alive, Shroud's death becomes inevitable. If you give him the prototype, Shroud will predict that's what you would do and get the real pulse anyway, and the same outcome happens. The only way to beat Shroud is to give him both, because if you've been paying attention, you'd know Shroud's predictions are based on his knowledge. And since both pulses look identical, his predictions are useless. And that calm demeanor of his evaporates, because now, probably for the first time in years, he has to make a decision without knowing the outcome.
What the fuck is this, Robert?
You said you wanted the Astropulse. I gave it to you. One of those is it.
They look fucking identical, Robert.
Look, you're right. I can't outsmart you. Because, you know what? I'm not a smart guy. So, the only way to keep you from knowing what I'm doing is to not have any idea what I'm doing. Which is how I feel all the time. But I trust my gut and I take my best guess. Just like you used to do. Before you plugged all those fucking Christmas lights into your head. Before you were afraid to make your own decisions. Elliot.
Quick tangent, I like to think that this scene about Shroud's powers also acts as a meta-commentary on people who research branching narrative games before playing them to get the best outcomes. I'm not stigmatizing people who do that, but it does take away that feeling of not knowing what effect your choices will have. But anyways, Shroud picks the wrong pulse.
I can see it all. It's all there. Every permutation.
Uh-oh.
You chose poorly.
And let me tell you, getting this outcome on my first playthrough was so satisfying. Because sure, this moment doesn't really affect the ending, that's up to Invisigal, but it was still satisfying on a personal level. Because for me, there was a real feeling of suspense since I didn't know if I had made the right choice. And Shroud has been dicking us around since episode 1, so getting the chance to make him sweat and see the look of defeat on his face? Absolute Schadenfreude. The moral of the story? Don't trust AI. My one issue with Dispatch, however, is the plot twist at the end where Shroud says Invisigal was a double agent from the beginning and was planted to get close to Robert, either as a girlfriend or a protege. You see, I can accept the game's other limitations due to the studio's limited resources, but this twist feels out of place and overcomplicated. Because a good plot twist doesn't just surprise the spectators, it's also subtly telegraphed to them, so when they look back on the whole story, the twist doesn't contradict anything. In comparison, the plot twist that Vizzy planted the bomb on Robert's suit works because of this line from Toxic.
Hey, Frank! All go to class! Now get out of there, babe!
At first we think he's referring to Robert, telling him to get out of the suit, and calling him bae because we assume he's poking jabs at him because, well, he's a toxic man. But he's actually telling Vizzy to get clear of the bomb, and the event ties to Invisigal's belief that she can't shake off the mistakes of her past and become a hero. Her hidden lung implant also fits since her powers are tied to her being able to hold her breath, and her smoking habit was making her asthma worse. And her statement about her implants being turned off after she left Shroud tracks with the time she struggled in combat. Now, the twist about her being a double agent could work, but it requires a lot of mental gymnastics from the player for it to make sense, since the story is mostly from Robert's perspective. One possibility is that Shroud could be lying, or not telling the whole truth, since he's known to manipulate situations to his advantage and mess with people just for fun. And reading the comics that come with the Deluxe Edition prove that he lied about how Robert's dad died. That instead of gunning him down and standing over his defeated corpse, he shot once and ran away. But if he was lying, why didn't Vizzy defend herself? I mean, this is the one time where silence is not a valid option. There's also the fact that no matter the ending, Shroud firmly believes that Invisigal is on his side and doesn't see her betrayal coming. So, I'm not entirely certain he's lying. After doing some extensive research in the community and multiple playthroughs, the running theory is that Invisigal either did initially start as a double agent, and Shroud had her implant turned off to help her cover if it was ever discovered, Or her version of events are true, that she left Shroud, he turned off her implants, and she joined SDN. And Shroud could have recruited Invisigal after she showed no improvement as a hero, which does track with her being on the bottom of the leaderboard for months. Whatever the case, I believe she stopped working for Shroud after Robert helped her keep her spot on the Z team and made her believe that she could be a hero, which is supported when one of Shroud's henchmen tried to capture Vizzy for questioning, and when Shroud later tried to kill her. But after that, when Vizzy leaves SDN either because she got cut or felt she didn't deserve to stay, Shroud recruits her again. However, the main problem of this theory and the twist in general is why did Shroud think Invisigal was still on his side, especially when she stole the Astral Pulse for herself and fought against Shroud's men in the final fight. She even blew up his mech with a grenade and flipped him off, and that didn't tip him off? Considering how Shroud's powers work, it's hard to believe he didn't predict her betrayal. Don't get me wrong, I still love this game and these characters, but if Adhoc manages to go forward on a Season 2, they have a chance to fill this plot hole. And I think I know how. Since there are stretches of time where Invisigal isn't actually seen by the player, the writers have the freedom to fill in the missing time. So what if after Vizzy took the pulse and was suspended, she hid it in the SDN building because neither Robert nor Shroud would ever think to look for it there? And after Shroud worked out that Vizzy kept the pulse for herself, he tracked her down and she told Shroud she hid it for Robert to find. And in exchange for the location, Shroud would reactivate her lung implant. This way, Shroud would believe Vizzy was still her old villain self, and that he could still control her. And since Robert could find the pulse and reactivate his suit at any time, Shroud doesn't have a lot of time to weigh his options. And Vizzy can't risk telling Robert the full truth, because Shroud will probably work out the deception due to him knowing Robert's behavior patterns. But there's still the question of why Shroud would continue to believe Vizzy is on his side when she fought against him in the final battle. So what if, as a backup plan, Shroud ordered Invisigal to put Beef on the roof for him to take hostage? Because there's a scene where Vizzy is handcuffed after being caught with the pulse, and whether Robert lets her go or keeps her restrained, there's a period of time where she's unaccounted for. Plenty of time for her to grab Beef from Chase's room and place him on the roof for Shroud or one of his underlings to grab. This act alone would absolutely win Shroud's trust, and he probably ordered her to keep fighting him to maintain her cover. And think of the conflict this would cause if Robert, or hell, even Chase, found out that Vizzy helped Shroud take Beef hostage. Think of it, Adhoc. I know they'll probably never see this, but think of it, Adhoc. If you like the base game so far and want to see more, you're welcome to purchase the Deluxe Edition. There's behind the scenes notes, early concept art, and bonus comics. The Art of Dispatch provides a better understanding of the amount of changes the setting and characters went through, and you can really feel how proud the developers were about their favourite moments making the final cut. So if you're interested in game development or art design, this is right up your alley. The digital comics that came with the Deluxe Edition provide extra side stories that expand on the characters that didn't get enough attention and provides further context the main game establishes. The first 3 chapters are quick peeks into Waterboy, Malevola, Sonar, Punch-Up, and Coupe. Chapter 1 showcases Waterboy's home life with his grandma and how he struggles with his powers. Chapter 2 is about Malevola and Sonar's last bender before they joined the Phoenix program. And Chapter 3 is about how Coupe met Punch-Up because she was meant to assassinate him, but they ended up together instead. Fun, simple stories that give enough information for us to infer what each character is about. The last 3 chapters do expand on the other characters, but they also delve deeper into some very important story details. Chapter 4 depicts Blazer and Phenomeman's breakup dinner, and really takes the time to show why their relationship wasn't working in a mature way. Though Phenomeman is content with living and dying as a superhero, Blazer wants to also have a normal relationship where she can be Mandy. Neither of them is in the wrong, they just want different things, so instead of wasting each other's lives, Blazer decides to end their relationship. Chapters 5 and 6 definitely have the most meat, as they delve into the Brave Brigade with a young Chase, a pre-Shroud Elliot Connors, and Robbie Robertson Jr. Though both chapters only show a snippet of Robbie's life, they portray how much of a hard ass he was and why. In Get Up, the Brave Brigade are having a barbecue, and Robbie and Chase are discussing whether Elliot should join because his cybernetics could make them more effective, but Robbie still has reservations. More on that later. Meanwhile, Robert is tinkering with the mech suit and triggers the defense system, and though Chase manages to drag Robert to safety, his arm is dislocated and he loses a chunk of his ear, giving him that iconic scar. After examining his ear, all Robbie says is "get up," and those words echo to when Robert became Mecha Man. The main game infers that Robbie gave Robert a lot of tough love, and the comic shows that though Robbie loved his son, he knew that if Robert became the next Mecha Man, he would have to learn how to endure pain because that comes with the mantle. However, in the death of Mecha Man, we see how Robbie's method of tough love actually comes back to bite him. Years later, tensions between Robbie and Elliot are rising, as he is blocking Elliot from joining the Brave Brigade. In a fit of rage, Elliot challenges Robbie to a fight, saying if he wins, he'll join the team and take back the Astral Pulse. And Robbie demolishes him, both figuratively and literally. Chase intervenes and reads Robbie the riot act, but Robbie just says that if Elliot wants to be on the team, he has to know that the villains he'll fight won't go easy on him. And Robbie explains that the reason he prevented Elliot from joining the Brave Brigade is because he doesn't think Elliot has what it takes to be a hero, but also says that if Elliot returns after the beatdown, Robbie will know he's serious. And Elliot does return, with a gun. He shoots Robbie, and Chase isn't fast enough to save him. This chapter is significant not just because it shows that Shroud is a dirty liar, but it shows how Robbie's tough love mentality when training people to become superheroes doesn't always work. Because sure, Robert became a resilient hero, but Elliot became a villain. And if Robbie handled things differently, he may not have died. And that belief is more likely when comparing Elliot's fate to Invisigal's, since she becomes a villain if Robert has the same attitude as his father. This insight into the past also adds context to why Chase doesn't trust the Z-Team, since he advocated for Elliot to join the brigade, and it got Robbie killed, so now he's trying to prevent the same thing from happening to Robert. Despite the game's shortcomings and limitations, Dispatch manages to create multiple original superheroes with unique personalities, while also having an engaging gameplay loop, near-perfect writing throughout, and a flawless art style. But more than that, Dispatch proves that branching narrative games still have a place in the medium, and I hope to see more of its like in the future.